I hope you call upon your member of Congress.
We got to go because the House has already started its session for the day. Thank you so much for being here.
Susan, a pleasure.
Good holiday season to you.
You too.
Thanks for watching on this Friday morning. We'll be here tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. You have a good day till then.
With those with whom they are at odds. May the members realize that your congregation is wider and broader than ever we could measure or determine. Help them and help us all, O Lord, to put away any judgments that belong to you and do what we can to live together in peace. As we approach this next recess, bless our great nation and keep it faithful to its ideals, its hopes, and its promise of freedom in our world. Bless us this day and every day, and may all that is done within the people's house be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
The Chair has examined the Journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the Journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson.
Everyone, including our guests in the gallery, please join in.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Chair will entertain up to 5 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. What purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, in the piney woods of East Texas, the small town of Athens in Henderson County is getting ready for the holidays. A group of local volunteers with Keep Athens Beautiful has placed a nativity scene on the far corner of the courthouse square. It has been there for the last 10 years with no complaints from residents. But a group of out-of-towners, not from Athens, not even from Texas, but from 1,000 miles away in Wisconsin, have self-righteously objected to the nativity scene. The anti-religious hate group demands baby Jesus be evicted from the courthouse lawn. The county judge politely said no local citizen has complained about the scene, and he really doesn't care what somebody from Wisconsin thinks. He even invited other religious groups to use the courthouse square, but no one has asked to do so. The county officials don't appear to be succumbing to the intimidation tactics of the bigoted group that wants to censor religion. County Commissioner Joe Hall made it clear, quote, "We will remove the nativity scene when hell freezes over. It's not going anywhere, and that's just the way it is." I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island seek recognition?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Gentleman from Rhode Island is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, Congress should not be waiting until the 11th hour to act on behalf of the American people. And yet here we are with the Federal Emergency Unemployment Compensation Program and the payroll tax cut scheduled to end in just a couple of weeks, which will cause tremendous harm to the American people. This holiday, thousands of Rhode Islanders are wondering whether they will be able to afford to stay in their homes. Will they be able to afford to go grocery shopping? And will they be able to afford their heating and electricity bills? Americans are being left with real uncertainty because of the failure of this body to act responsibly. It's a shame that extending emergency unemployment compensation and the payroll tax cut have become the latest victims of partisan politics. But it's not too late to act to provide families with a measure of assurance that they will be able to meet their basic necessities in the weeks to come. I've heard from many of my constituents about the devastating impact that ending unemployment benefits or a tax increase will have. Let's get it done. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and advise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, in 2003, the United States military and its allies began operations to remove Saddam Hussein from power, who was a ruthless dictator and a threat to stability in the Middle East, undermining world peace. Yesterday, the United States military successfully concluded its military involvement in Iraq. We have victory in Iraq for the people of Iraq to build upon. As the proud father of 2 sons who served in Iraq, I want to offer a heartfelt thank you to every American service member who served in the country and their families. I want to thank and assure the family members of the service members who lost their lives, exemplified by Major Train McLeod, and those who are wounded warriors fighting for freedom that their sacrifice and their military families will always be cherished. Secretary Leon Panetta in Baghdad said, Iraq has made remarkable progress over the last 9 years. Army General Lloyd J. Austin III, commander of U.S. forces in Iraq, praised service members and families for meeting our national objectives and giving hope for Iraq for a prosperous future. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism.
Gentleman's time has expired. What purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday we marked the end of the war in Iraq. I join with all of my colleagues in expressing our gratitude to those Americans who served when their country called. We owe it to our returning veterans to do everything we can to make sure the economy they're returning to is strong and prosperous. The United States spent $62 billion nation building in Iraq. The end of the war will generate enough savings to put a down payment on nation building we need to do right here in America. An aggressive investment in infrastructure, rebuilding our roads, bridges, rails, and water systems can generate the economic activity we need to reduce unemployment. A $1.2 trillion investment will create 27 million jobs over 5 years. This growth will both reduce the debt and deficit. We have deferred infrastructure investments in America for too long. We get a degrading from the Society of Civil Engineers. The Chamber of Commerce predicts that $362 billion in lost growth over the next 5 years will occur unless we repair our infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, we need to do everything we can to ensure that our returning veterans have an opportunity to work and to rebuild this nation right here at home. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from California rise? Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow Boy Scout Troop 121 of Granite Bay, California will conduct its 200th Eagle Scout Court of Honor and induct its 212th and 213th Eagle Scouts. During its 43 years of existence, Troop 121 has produced an entire generation of young men who have gone on to become upstanding family men, respected businessmen, and leaders of our community. And that's what I particularly want to salute today, the work of the Boy Scouts of America as exemplified by Troop 121. The hiking and camping and outdoor activities might make Boy Scouting appealing and enjoyable, but what makes it admirable and elevated is not that it produces good campers, but that it produces good citizens. It inculcates timeless values and virtues that forge solid citizens who contribute far beyond their numbers to the strength and stability of our society. Troop 121 has done this for 43 years, and it's my pleasure and honor to commend them on their good work. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. What purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise?
Request permission to address the House 1 minute, revise and extend.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, we all know that many senior citizens in our country have trouble getting the Social Security and Medicare benefits they've paid for throughout their working life, and many veterans have trouble receiving the benefits they've earned through their service and sacrifice in protecting our country. However, because of the hard work of my district staff, folks in my district are covered over $3.5 million in benefits that they were entitled to, but were not getting from the federal government in just the last year alone. This shines a light on a big problem with our federal government. Our constituents shouldn't have to appeal to their congressman to get the benefits they're entitled to. We need to work together to make the Social Security Administration and the Department of Veterans Affairs work better so that none of our constituents will have to get their congressman to help them get their benefits. Until we get to that point, I'm proud that I have a talented and hard-working staff who may report to me, but who work for the people of Georgia's 12th District. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana rise?
To address the House for 1 minute, to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to highlight a newer technology called enhanced oil recovery. When an oil well runs dry, half as much oil remains underground, unable to be extracted using traditional means. This is where enhanced oil recovery comes in. EOR, as it's called, pumps CO2 into the ground, and oil which is trapped can be extracted safely and cost-effectively. Now, enhanced oil recovery is not hydraulic fracturing or fracking. It is a process that displaces oil and allows it to be extracted. The Department of Energy states that enhanced oil recovery can yield as much as 80 billion barrels of oil, decreasing our needs to import by as much as a third. And for those seeking to reduce atmospheric CO2, enhanced oil recovery provides the sequestration of carbon capture and sequestration. As importantly, enhanced oil recovery employs thousands of Americans while generating royalty payments to local, state, and federal governments. Enhanced oil recovery creates jobs, increases energy security, and potentially benefits our environment, a technology to be supported as much as we can. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, over the past several weeks we've heard a lot of rhetoric about how this House has passed so many jobs bills that are sitting in the Senate waiting for action. But I want to talk about one bill that actually passed the Senate. It is waiting in the House for action, and that is going after countries that manipulate their currency, of which China is the largest violator. The bill's been sitting in committee since February with no Republican action. A discharge petition has sat at this desk for the last 5 months with no Republican action. It remains just 30 signatures shy of forcing action on Chinese currency manipulation, which estimates show could create 1.5 million jobs in this country. So I want to urge the citizens of this country to call their Republican congressmen, to urge this Republican House, that as they open their presents over this holiday season and they open those boxes and find those little tags that say Made in China, call your Republican congressman, call this Republican House and say thank you. Thank you for putting party before country. Tell them, put country before party. Don't put China's economy before the United States'. And I yield back.
The gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
To address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a small business owner, I know that it's tough to get access to capital. If a company doesn't have the resources it needs to grow and expand, then it's virtually impossible to hire new workers. Yesterday, the Financial Services Committee had a hearing where we examined a bipartisan bill, H.R. 3606, which would make it easier for companies to access capital markets and ease the overwhelming regulations that these young businesses encounter. This is exactly the type of bill that both sides can agree on, and I certainly urge my colleagues to support it. Without a doubt, by allowing companies access to the markets, we give them the opportunity to succeed, and in turn they will have the opportunity to create additional jobs, which is what we desperately need. Bill after bill has been passed out of this body and goes over to the Senate. Over 24 bills wait on the Senate, which each and every one of them are bipartisan and would create additional jobs. With an unemployment rate of over 8% for the past 34 months and at least 9% for 28 of those months, it's about time that we move forward on the jobs package that we're trying to push in the House. We need to step up and get America back to work. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. What purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
Rise to ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we come to the close of yet another calendar year, and as we move well into the federal fiscal year, much work remains to be done for America's hard-working, middle-class families, the working families of this country that make our economy work. We need to make certain that we respond with the extension of a payroll tax holiday. This House knows that that is important business. We know that the President presented a plan before Congress that would ask for a surcharge on the most upper income strata in our country to bring about fundamental fairness, to address social and economic justice. We know that the hard-working middle class has taken it on the chin with tax cuts of a decade and a half ago that have really caused hardship with a recession in this country where we lost 8.2 million jobs. We can go forward and do the right thing. We can extend that payroll tax holiday and pay for it in a meaningful way, in a balanced way. We can then go forward with investments that middle-class America truly deserves and requires. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on motions to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered, or on which the vote is objected to under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Record votes on postponed questions will be taken later. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and agree to the Senate amendment to H.R. 1892, the Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal year 2012.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 1892, an act to authorize appropriations for fiscal year 2012 for intelligence and intelligence-related activities of the United States government, the Community Management Account, and the Central Intelligence Agency Retirement and Disability System, and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Rogers, and the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Ruppersberger, will each control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan.
Mr. Speaker, I would yield myself such time as I might consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you very much. This is a good day for the United States, certainly a good day for the men and women who serve so proudly in our intelligence services that work tirelessly to keep America safe. This is a good day to bring the fiscal year 2012 Intelligence Authorization Bill to the floor today. This will be our second Intelligence Authorization Bill since January of this year when I became chairman and my ranking member took his position as well for the House Intelligence Committee, and it will be the 29th bill in our committee's history. This bill is a vital tool for congressional oversight of the intelligence community's classified activities and is critical to ensuring that our intelligence agencies have the resources and authorities they need to do their important work. Passing an annual intelligence authorization bill is vital to keeping the laws governing our intelligence operations up to date. The fiscal year 12 bill sustains our current intelligence capabilities and provides for the development of future capabilities, all while achieving significant savings. The U.S. intelligence community plays a critical role in the war on terrorism and securing the country from many threats that we face today. Effective and aggressive congressional oversight is essential to ensuring continued success in the intelligence community. The Intelligence Authorization Bill funds U.S. intelligence activities spanning 17 separate agencies. This funding totaled roughly $80 billion in fiscal year 2010. The current challenging fiscal environment demands the accountability and financial oversight of our classified intelligence programs that can only come with an intelligence authorization bill. The bill's comprehensive classified annex provides detailed guidance on intelligence spending, including adjustments to costly programs. This bill funds the requirements of the men and women of the intelligence community, both military and civilian, many of whom directly support the war zones, are engaged in other dangerous operations to keep America and Americans safe. It provides oversight and authorization for critical intelligence activities, including the global counterterrorism operations, such as the one that took out Osama bin Laden, cyber defense by the National Security Agency, countering the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, global monitoring of foreign militaries and weapons tests, research and development of new technology to maintain our intelligence agency's technological edge, including work on code-breaking and spy satellites. This has been a strategy for a tough fiscal climate. After passage of the Budget Control Act, the committee revamped the bill. It reported out of committee back in May to double its budget savings. As a result, the bill is significantly below the President's budget request for fiscal year 2012 and further still below the levels authorized and appropriated in fiscal year 2011. These savings, and this is important, Mr. Speaker, were achieved without impacting the intelligence community's important mission as we did in the 1990s. The bottom line is that this bipartisan bill preserves and advances national security and is also fiscally responsible. The secrecy that is necessary part of our
country's intelligence work requires the Congressional Intelligence Committees conduct strong and effective oversight on behalf of the American people. That strong and effective oversight is impossible, however, without an annual intelligence authorization bill. And I want to thank both the staffs for the Republicans and the Democrats and the members from both Republicans and Democrats on this committee to coming together in a bipartisan way on the important issue of national security. And thank my friend Dutch Ruppersberger, the ranking member, for his leadership in getting us not to one, but to 2 authorization bills within just 10 months. And it's no small accomplishment, as you may know, Mr. Speaker. And with that, I would reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Ruppersberger.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
I rise today in favor of the Intelligence Authorization Act of FY 2012. When Chairman Rogers and I took over leadership of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, we made a commitment to work together to ensure the intelligence community has the authorities it needs to effectively protect America. This Intelligence Authorization Bill achieves this purpose. It gives our intelligence professionals critical resources, capabilities, and authorities. We passed FY 11 earlier this year, and now we can see the finish line for FY 12. For 5 years, there were no intelligence bills. There was a gap in oversight. When this bill is signed into law, it will be the 3rd time in 3 years that the Intelligence Committee has passed an Intel Authorization Act. Now, I strongly believe that passing the authorization bill is critical to national security. The Intelligence Committee wants to strengthen the intelligence community and give them the tools they need. However, it is also our job to conduct thorough, effective oversight and provide budgetary direction. This bill does that. This bill makes smart choices. It trims and eliminates duplicative efforts wherever possible. We made careful decisions and were mindful to protect the current and future capabilities that protect our nation. This bill aligns our resources with our current threats and makes important investments in space, satellites, and cyber. This bill is even more important today with the 10th anniversary of 9/11 fresh in our minds. When it comes to terrorism, Osama bin Laden may be gone, but radical extremists still have the United States as a target. Intelligence is clearly the best defense against terrorism, and this bill makes our defense even stronger. This act is bipartisan and bicameral. The members of our Intelligence Committee worked not as Democrats or Republicans or as the House or Senate, but as Americans protecting our country. This bill is proof that Congress can work together to do good things. I fully support this bill and urge my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, and I also want to acknowledge the leadership of Chairman Rogers for helping put this bill together. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
I continue to reserve my time, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to my distinguished colleague from the state of California, Mr. Thompson.
Gentleman's recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of H.R. 1892, the Intelligence Authorization Act for FY 12. As the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Terrorism, Human Intelligence, Analysis, and Counterintelligence, I'm pleased that we're able to work together to bring a bipartisan, bicameral intelligence authorization bill to the House floor for the 3rd year in a row. This is a testament to the hard work and leadership of our Chairman, Mr. Rogers, and Ranking Member, Mr. Ruppersberger. This bill will increase information sharing throughout the intelligence community. It includes a provision that is important to my home state of California, requiring the Director of National Intelligence to compile a threat assessment of foreign drug traffickers that are destroying our public lands here in the United States and causing unacceptable levels of violence because of their drug-growing operations in our public parks and public forests. This bill requires the DNI to share this information with federal land management agencies like the Forest Service so that we can take back our public lands. The bill also includes a provision that I authored working with my friend and former committee colleague, Representative Anna Eshoo from California, requiring the Director of the Central Intelligence Agency to provide a full report on the events surrounding the May 2011 Osama bin Laden raid. We're all very proud of the intelligence community's extraordinary effort in carrying out this operation.
We believe it's important that the intelligence community document this operation in our permanent record as to how the operation was conducted and its importance to our counterterrorism efforts. Mr. Speaker, this legislation will improve our national security, will enhance the capabilities of the intelligence community, and will make our nation stronger. I urge my colleagues to support this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan.
Continue to reserve, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
I think we really need to discuss the issue of cybersecurity. Cyber threat is the one thing I think that keeps a lot of us on the Intelligence Committee up at night. How serious a threat it is to our country. We're being attacked on a regular basis, and we as a country need to do what we have to do to go forward and deal with the issue of cyber. Cyber poses one of the greatest threats to Americans from both an economic and national security perspective. We're losing millions of dollars because of cyber attacks. Our intellectual property is being stolen daily, just as we speak. Our Pentagon is being attacked as we speak. We have seen countless examples of cutting-edge U.S. ideas being stolen and used for foreign products. Cyber is also a major national security concern. We only have to look at the attack on South Korea banking system to realize the impact and attack they can have on critical infrastructure. In South Korea, depositors lost access to their money and critical investment. Data was lost. An attack like this could happen in the United States if we do not prepare and focus on the issue of cybersecurity. This bill strengthens U.S. cyber defenses and again, a very important part of this bill. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would yield myself as much time as I might consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
I appreciate the gentleman bringing up the issue of cyber security, an incredibly important issue, one that this committee spends a great deal of time, and the ranking member and myself and many members of this committee have co-authored a bill, and many members of this House, to give that first important step to protecting Americans' networks from both economic espionage and attack of those particular networks. I can't think of anything that is more pressing than that particular issue, and I appreciate the gentleman's working with us on that particular issue and being a leading voice here in Congress on that particular issue, and I would continue to reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
I think another major issue that we've addressed in this bill is the issue of space. And years ago, when we went to the moon, the whole country understood how important space was to the national defense of our country. And in those days, everyone knew the names of the astronauts, the same as they know the names of NFL quarterbacks today. And yet, because of the fact that there hasn't been as much in space, we as a country need to educate our constituents how important space is. We are the strongest country in the world, and one of the main reasons is because we are active in control of the skies. And yet, right now, our space program has to be reinvigorated, and we have to refocus on that. America, again, controls the world because we control the skies. Our investment in space keeps us safe. If we fail to make that investment, other countries will move ahead and edge us out. As an example, China is going to the moon. They're spending time, research, and development to go to the moon. Currently, we rely on the Russians to get to the International Space Station. We must reinvest in the capabilities that give us the edge in space. We also need to think about different ways to get ahead. The bill breaks down barriers of our launch industry. All options need to be on the table as we talk about keeping Americans' edge in space. I yield myself as much time as I may consume. I reserve the balance of my time.
On reserves. Gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
I would yield myself as much time as I might consume.
Gentleman's
Mr.
recognized.
Speaker. The ranking member brings up an important point about how complex this bill is and the level of threats and the degree of threat that this great country faces every day, and really the importance of our investment in the technology that we need to keep ahead of enemy nations who seek to do us harm. In this bill embodies the fact that our There will be members of the intelligence community whose job it is to find those Russian spies, like the illegal alien Russian case that was here, that are attempting to do bad things to the United States. Same with Chinese spies and Iranian spies, and the list is very long. And unfortunately, it's not a spy novel, it's not a movie. These things are real. They happen every day in the United States, and we are a target of those nation states as they seek to steal our secrets. This bill provides those protections. And that means that we have to invest in space. It means that we have to invest in our cybersecurity capability. It means that we have to invest in our human collection, meaning recruiting others who will help us identify and ferret out those who seek to do us harm. It means that we have the challenges of trying to make sure that al-Qaeda, who has expressed an interest in a radiological bomb, doesn't get their hands on those types of materials. It means that we have to be careful about nuclear weapons being proliferated around the world by either poor security or, worse yet, nation states who encourage that type of activity. It is no simple job being an intelligence officer or being in the intelligence community here in the United States. I think this bill is an accurate reflection on how we move to the next place, but an important reminder of the important work that they do, often in the shadows. The men and women who conduct this important work certainly deserve our support and all of the resources that we can muster to make sure that they're successful in their endeavors. And with that, I would continue to reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
Yes, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman's recognized.
I think it's extremely important that we look back where we've come from since 9/11. During 9/11, or before 9/11, we had agencies, intelligence agencies, that just were not working together. There was not a teamwork approach. And as a result of not working together, the attack of 9/11 occurred. The 9/11 Commission made numerous recommendations, and a lot of those recommendations were very positive and were implemented. As a result of the bin Laden raid and bringing him to justice, I think it showed the teamwork that is needed, especially in the intelligence community, to work together, whether or not it's NSA, it's NRO, it's the military, all of the different agencies coming together and working as a team. And we would not have had the success that we had with bin Laden if it weren't for that teamwork approach. I think now we have to learn about the teamwork approach and working together in Congress also. You know, we as members of Congress need to do our job and come together and do the people's work. And the partisan politics has to stop. And what I'm leading to is that I think that this bill and the previous bills that we've passed and the leadership of Chairman Rogers and the open-mindedness of every member, whether Democrat or Republican, on the Intelligence Committee, has allowed us to come together and have a bipartisan bill. And we would hope that what is happening here today and the bills that we've passed will be looked at as an example for the future. And again, Chairman Rogers, thank you for that commitment. Again, we made a commitment when we first came that the stakes are too high, national security is too high, and we must work together. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Michigan.
I continue to reserve the balance of my time, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman reserves.
Yes, I would like to yield 3 minutes to a member of the Intelligence Committee from California, Mr. Schiff.
The gentleman's recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I want to thank the chair and ranking member for the extraordinary job that they've done on the Intelligence Committee. This committee, I think, has been more productive than it's been in years, and owing largely to the efforts of these two gentlemen as well as all the members of the committee. So I'm greatly appreciative of the spirit of cooperation and nonpartisanship that prevails on the Intelligence Committee, and I want to thank both of these gentlemen. I also enjoy working with Joe Heck, the chairman of the Technical and Tactical Subcommittee. And as ranking member, I appreciate the opportunity to work on our overhead architecture issues. I remain concerned that we are largely investing in some heritage systems that are important but very expensive and can often crowd out new innovations and new technologies that are worthy of investment, that provide the potentially game-changing capabilities. But I look forward to continuing to work with the chair and ranking member to advance the science and technology
that helps us stay one step ahead of our adversaries and help us keep an eye on some of the bad actors around the world that pose a potentially great threat to the United States. But once again, I'm greatly appreciative of the efforts of the committee and our leadership. I think this is a superb bill and moves our intelligence capabilities forward. I urge my colleagues to join in support and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I might consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
I appreciate the gentleman. Look forward to continuing to work with the gentleman from California on those activities when it comes to our overhead architecture. There are programs worthy of investment, and the technology that we apply to this particular effort is incredibly important. We always need to stay ahead. America always needs to be number one. And this bill reflects that. I think the work of the gentleman certainly is reflected in this bill as well. And I look forward to continuing to work with you to make sure that we don't have crowd out when it comes to future technology. I think it's incredibly important, and I would continue to reserve my time, Mr.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
Yes, I yield myself as much time as I may consume. I do want to acknowledge the Technical Tactical Committee and the work done by Mr. Heck and also Mr. Schiff. I've served with Mr. Schiff for years on the Intelligence Committee, and he's been very focused in the technical area, which is extremely important to our national security. I'm ready to close. Okay. Mr. Speaker, again, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
It took a long time for us to get to this point here today. We spent days in important hearings analyzing the intelligence community, making sure that we focused on what the intelligence community needed. We knew, as this country has an issue with respect to the deficit, that we had to do some cutting. It's not about cutting, it was what to cut, and we wanted to make sure that the cuts that we made in this intelligence bill, working as Republicans and Democrats, would not affect the mission or the national security of our country. We spent time before the bill passed, hours and hours working, staff working, coming together. And what's very unique also about this committee is that both the intelligence, both the Democrat and the Republican staff worked very closely together. And I hadn't seen that in the past as a member of this committee for over 9 years right now. And that's one of the main reasons that we have such a great, effective staff that work together as a team to come together and to make sure that we did what we had to do. Now we are here today to finish the job. Republicans and Democrats have come together to make important choices and do what is right for the intelligence community and our country. This bill makes America safer. Again, I commend everyone who participated in this effort, especially the bipartisan leadership of Chairman Rogers, the other members of the Intelligence Committee, and the leadership of the Senators Feinstein and Chambliss in the Senate Intelligence Committee. Again, we're working together. We can do our work here, but we need the Senate to come together, and we did, and we now have the product here today. I'd like to thank again both the Democrat and Republican staff for the countless hours they spent. I fully support the FY12 Intelligence Authorization Act and urge my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields. The gentleman from Michigan.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I might consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Again, I want to thank the members of the committee, both Republican and Democrat, for their fine bipartisan effort on this national security bill of real significance. Many, many hours on behalf of both the Democrat staff and the Republican staff to get this right. When we had to trim back some finances from the community without impacting the mission, that is no small challenge. And I think this product is a testament to all the work on behalf of both staffs and both members, Republican and Democrat, to get us here. I want to take this time to thank Senator Feinstein and Senator Chambliss for their work as well on this particular bill. We wouldn't be here today if it weren't for that bicameral, bipartisan effort on this national security bill. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I would ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the bill, H.R. 1892, just as it will be adopted.
Without objection.
Great. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I will yield back the remainder of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and concur in Senate amendment to H.R. 1892? Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The Senate amendment is agreed to, and without objection, The motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
Mr.
Gentleman
Speaker,
from
I will
Michigan.
call for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking a vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on the question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Florida seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to suspend the rules and concur in the Senate amendment to the bill H.R. 2867, the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, Reform and Reauthorization Act of 2011.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2867, an act to reauthorize the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998 and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Ross-Layton, and the gentleman from California, Mr. Berman, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Florida.
I thank the Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that members may have 5 legislative days to insert remarks and extraneous materials on this measure into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, sir. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the right to free religious belief and practice is a fundamental human right. But as Coptic Christians in Egypt and other religious minorities can attest, that right is frequently and tragically denied. It was for this reason that Congress established the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, an independent, bipartisan federal commission charged with monitoring and protecting and promoting religious freedom abroad. Our State Department prioritizes an array of diplomatic, economic, and other issues that sometimes keep it from speaking and acting boldly against religious suppression. For this reason alone, the single-minded role of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom as a truth-telling watchdog and policy advocate remains critically important. The Commission's annual report, its list of countries meriting CPC designation, and its special reports push American foreign policy to better reflect America's most cherished liberties. For example, in spite of long-standing abuses, Vietnam has not been redesignated by the State Department as a country of particular concern, CPC, for religious freedom violations. But the Commission has built a compelling case for Vietnam's CPC status, reporting on the repression of Protestants in the Central Highlands, unregistered Buddhist groups, and others, a call that was echoed by our Foreign Affairs Committee earlier this year in our state authorization bill. Yet the Commission will soon have to shut its doors unless Congress acts immediately to reauthorize it. For this reason, the House overwhelmingly passed H.R. 2867 back in September. This bipartisan bill would reform and reauthorize the Commission, and in recognition of the fiscal challenges we face, included funding that is a 30% cut from current year funding levels. Finally, 3 days ago, the Senate unanimously passed H.R. 2867, along with a brief amendment which is before us today. The Senate amendment adds a few additional reforms, including standard federal regulation of Commission travel to those required by our House bill. I want to thank my good friend from Virginia, Mr. Frank Wolf, for his indispensable leadership in authoring this bill. I also want to thank my ranking member, Mr. Berman of California, and our Senate colleagues for their cooperation. I urge all of our colleagues to join us in voting aye and sending H.R. 2867 to the President's desk as soon as possible. Let us remind the world that we stand as one against the persecution of religious believers anywhere. With that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of our time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of H.R. 2867, the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom Reform and Reauthorization Act of 2011, and the Senate amendments to the bill. And I yield my and I want to initially start out by thanking the sponsor of this legislation, the gentleman from Virginia, Frank Wolf, for his leadership on the issue of international religious freedom, Senator Durbin for his efforts to strengthen the bill, my chairman, Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, for her management of this whole process that's finally going to get this reauthorization hopefully passed and sent to the President. We're fortunate to live in a country that was founded by religious refugees on principles of tolerance, and we strive to adhere to Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which states that, quote, everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes the freedom to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance. But elsewhere around the world, religious freedom and human rights are routinely violated. Countless men, women, and children face violence, persecution, and discrimination because of their faith. Unfortunately, intolerance is not restricted to just a few countries. Violent extremist attacks have taken place in the Middle East and South Asia. The regimes in North Korea and Iran actively repress religious freedom. Apostasy and blasphemy laws have fueled discrimination against religious minorities in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia. Other religious minorities like the Tibetan Buddhists, the Uyghur Muslims, the Ahmadis, and the Baha'is face violence and government restrictions, and anti-Semitism is still prevalent around the world. More than ever, we need the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom to continue its important work to support the right to practice one's religion freely around the globe. This bipartisan bill before us today reauthorizes the Commission, known as USERF, for another 3 years. The bill also contains some sensible reforms that will strengthen USERF's efforts to monitor and report on the status of freedom of religion abroad. These reforms include the process of selecting the chair, term limits for service for members of the Commission, travel regulations, and a geo-study on improving the effectiveness and coordination of all the U.S. government bodies that focus on international religious freedom. In particular, I would like to thank Mr. Wolf for agreeing to include a provision that clarifies that USERF is subject to the same workplace protections and civil rights laws as the rest of the federal government. With this piece of legislation, USERF will be able to more effectively carry out its mission and be the commission it was intended to be. I urge my colleagues to support the legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Does the gentleman reserve his time?
No, the gentleman yields back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I like to yield such time as he may consume to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Wolf. He's the chairman of the Appropriations Subcommittee on State Foreign Operations and the author of this bill.
Gentleman is recognized.
I thank the chair very much, and I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend.
Without objection.
And I want to thank Mrs. Ros-Lehtinen and her staff for really being very dogged and persistent, and I really want them to know how grateful I am, and as people are for this bill, they should know that had it not been for them, we would not be here. I also want to thank Mr. Berman and his staff. I want to thank Mr. Kenner and his staff for scheduling this. I want to single out Speaker Boehner and his staff because they were part of this effort for the last several months, and they were very faithful. And I want to thank them also. I want to thank my staff for being involved in this for well over a year. The Coptic Christians are going through a very difficult time. The Iraqi Christians are being killed, and difficult things are happening to them. In Tibet, the Buddhists are setting themselves aflame because of the persecution of the Chinese government. The Catholic Church in China is under stress. 25 bishops are under house arrest. The Protestant house church in China is being squeezed and persecuted. The Christians in Sudan and in the Blue Nile area are going through genocide and being killed because of their faith. And interesting enough, the original bill passed on the very last day of the Congress a number of years ago, and history is repeating itself. The Commission has been a beacon of hope. And with that, I just want to again thank all those who helped us get here and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back.
Thank you.
Gentlelady from Florida.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. Dreyer, the chairman of the Committee on Rules.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Speaker, I thank the distinguished chair of the Committee on Foreign Affairs for yielding me the time, and I rise to congratulate my very good friend Frank Wolf, who has just talked about both the Sudan and China as very key areas where the religious persecution has taken place and continues to be a threat. I've been working with the chair of the Committee on Foreign Affairs and other members in a bipartisan way on the situation that exists in Egypt. And one of the reasons I wanted to offer remarks is that when she stood up and talked about the Coptic Christians in Egypt, we obviously know that there are challenging days ahead, and I think it's very important for us to do everything that we can to encourage those who may have had a history of engaging in religious persecution in the past to recognize religious freedom, the human rights, the rights of women, the rule of law, and all of the other very critical items that are a key part of the development of democracies. So many people believe that you have a democracy if you hold an election. Well, Mr. Speaker, as you know very well, one election a democracy does not make, and there are other very important aspects of the development of democracy, and religious freedom is a key part of that. And I thank my friend for yielding.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, with that, we have no further requests for time, and we yield back the balance of our time.
The gentlelady yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and concur in the Senate amendment, H.R. 2867? Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The Senate amendments are agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. By direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 500 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 101, House Resolution 500. Resolved that upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider the conference report to accompany the bill H.R. 2055, making appropriations for military construction, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2012, and for other purposes. All points of order against the conference report and against its consideration are waived. The conference report shall be considered as read. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the conference report to its adoption without intervening motion, except 1 hour of debate, and 2, 1 motion to recommit if applicable. Section 2. Upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill, H.R. 3672, making appropriations for disaster relief requirements for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2012, and for other purposes. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. The bill shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill to final passage without intervening motion except 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations, and 2, 1 motion to recommit. Section 3. Upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the concurrent resolution, House Concurrent Resolution 94, directing the Clerk of the House of Representatives to make corrections in the enrollment of H.R. 3672. All points of order against consideration of the concurrent resolution are waived. The concurrent resolution shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the concurrent resolution are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the concurrent resolution to its adoption without intervening motion except 1, 20 minutes of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations, and 2, 1 motion to recommit which may not contain instructions. Section 4. The clerk shall not transmit to the Senate a message that the House has passed H.R. 3672 until notified by the Speaker or by message from the Senate that the Senate has taken the question on adoption of House Concurrent Resolution 94 as adopted by the House. Section 5. It shall be in order at any time on the legislative day of December 16, 2011, for the Speaker to entertain motions that the House suspend the rules as though under Clause 1C of Rule 15 relating to a measure continuing appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2012. Section 6, the requirement of Clause 6A of Rule 13 for a two-thirds vote to consider a report from the Committee on Rules on the same day it is presented to the House is waived with respect to any resolution reported through the legislative day of December 31, 2011, providing for consideration or disposition of any of the following measures. 1. A measure relating to expiring provisions of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. 2. A measure relating to the Medicare payment system for physicians. 3. A measure relating to appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2012.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. For the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to my very good friend from Rochester, New York, the distinguished ranking minority member of the Committee on Rules, pending which I yield myself such time as I might consume, Mr. Speaker, and I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, H.R. 500, House Res. 500, provides for consideration of 3 measures that will ensure that the government is funded through the end of the fiscal year. And this rule, as was outlined by the reading clerk, provides very important tools to deal with important issues that have yet to be resolved. Now, Mr. Speaker, we all know that as we sit here at 3 minutes of 10 o'clock this morning, we are faced at midnight tonight with the prospect of a government shutdown. And there is a bipartisan consensus on the need to ensure that we don't face a government shutdown. And it's very important that we take action. That's exactly what our opportunity is here today. At the same time, it's important for us to realize that it is absolutely imperative, if we are going to get our economy going and create jobs, for us to reduce the size and scope and reach of the federal government. That's the message that the American people have sent to us overwhelmingly, and that's why I have to say that I believe this bipartisan compromise, which has been worked out with members of the House and the Senate and the White House, moves us in the direction of doing just that. Why? Because we are actually bringing about, in this conference report, a $95 billion reduction in discretionary spending. Merely a drop in the bucket. We all recognize that it's not enough. We all recognize that much, much more remains to be done. But, Mr. Speaker, this is an important first step, and the fact that it's been done in a bipartisan, bicameral way, working not only with the first but the second branch of government as well, is, I believe, a positive indicator for us. Now, as I think about the challenges that we have, and I said this during management of our jobs bill that we had, the so-called extenders measure that deals with the question of extending unemployment insurance, doing everything we possibly can to keep taxes low by extending for a year the payroll tax holiday, ensuring that people have access to Medicare dollars, and, of course, focusing on job creation by proceeding with the Keystone XL pipeline. As I pointed out during that debate, is right now our job is jobs. The American people want us to focus on job creation and economic growth, and I believe that this bipartisan, bicameral compromise will help us in that quest. It hasn't been pretty getting here. We all know the famous Otto von Bismarck line that you don't want to watch sausage or laws being made. This has been ugly. And actually, I was not going to say what I'm about to say right now, Mr. Speaker, but I'm going to proceed, and I'll explain to you why. It's been a painful and difficult and ugly and messy process, which, frankly, it's exactly what James Madison wanted. I mean, he's looking down at us saying the process is working just as I envisaged it, because he wanted there to be this clash of ideas and a struggle, but at the end of the day, he wanted there to be a compromise. And he wanted there to be an agreement at the end of the day, recognizing that that needed to be done. We know that the chairs of the Committee on Appropriations, Messrs. Rogers and Inouye, shook hands on Monday and had an agreement. And I, again, was not going to say this, but the Rules Committee completed its work early this morning, and I got a few hours sleep, and I woke up to National Public Radio, which I do. That's what wakes me up in the morning, Mr. Speaker, and I know there's some of my Republican friends who are not fans of National Public Radio, and I like to watch MSNBC TV and listen to National Public Radio. It keeps my blood circulating very well, Mr. Speaker. But I woke up this morning to listen to a report on this conference agreement. And again, I will say, and I'm very happy to see my good friend from Seattle, the distinguished ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, arrive on the floor. I wasn't going to say this, but because of this report on NPR, I am going to share it. Tamara Keith, who's the congressional correspondent for NPR on Morning Edition, characterized why it is that we are here on Friday rather than having met the 3-day requirement, layover requirement, and all these things that we wanted to do when the agreement was struck on Monday. And what she said was that Senate Democrats held this bill hostage. Those are not my words, again, Mr. Speaker. Those are the words of Tamara Keith, who reported on National Public Radio this morning that this measure was held hostage by Senate Democrats. And she went on to say a second time, using the word hostage, she's saying, well, finally, the hostages have been released. And again, those are not my words. Those are the words of National Public Radio. And so some people wanted me to say it, but I decided not to say it myself, but when I heard it early this morning, I couldn't help but say it. So that's the reason that I'm looking across the chamber right now at 3,000 pages, 3,000 pages stacked this high, right next to the distinguished ranking minority member of the Committee on Rules, right across the aisle from the distinguished ranking member of the Committee on Appropriations, Mr. Dix. And, Mr. Speaker, we've had to waive the 3-day layover requirement because, again, according to NPR, we had this conference report held hostage, but we've finally gotten here. Now that we're here, I'm happy to say that while I'm not ecstatic with every measure in it, just as I know that Mr. Dix is not ecstatic with every measure in it, I know that Ms. Slaughter is not ecstatic with every measure in it, I'm not ecstatic with the process that has gotten here because of the challenges and ugliness and messiness we've gone through this week. We are here because it is absolutely essential that we not see the government shut down in several hours, at midnight tonight. And so I believe that we need to realize, and I know Mr. Dix and I have had this conversation repeatedly, along with our friend Mr. Rogers, the chair of the Committee on Appropriations. We want a clean slate as we head into next year, so that Mr. Dix and Mr. Rogers will be able to go through regular order, bring the appropriations bills to the floor, and we hope and pray get each bill done ad seriatim, the way they're supposed to be done, rather than dealing with what has been characterized as an omnibus, a minibus, a megabus, but the term that I liked that was given by the distinguished chair of the Committee on Appropriations last night is, this is the rest of the bus. And that's really where we are, but it's essential for the American people, for those who are representing us so diligently around the world in conflicts, in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other spots, for people who rely and need to have support from government programs that do exist. It's essential that we get this measure passed. and pass it with what I hope will be strong bipartisan support. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to say that I'm happy that we are doing the things that will be outlined, I know, very thoughtfully by the distinguished chair of the, former chair and ranking member of the Committee on Rules, that will say that we've got 3,000 pages. By the way, I should say before my friend begins this, that on Monday, virtually all of that was available, and it was put online at 12:30 Wednesday night, right after midnight Wednesday. It was made available online, and so while we've not actually met the exact 3-day layover requirement, I should point to the fact that we always said, and I'm so proud of the fact that we've been able to do it, but when we faced what is really a very, very important deadline, that being the closure of the government that would take place 10 hours from now, I think it's important for us to do everything that we possibly can, or 14 hours from now. It's very important that we take this action and do it as quickly and as well as we possibly can. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
California reserves this time. The gentlelady for